Huh. An error occurred. Wait a moment and then try again. All right. I'm going to give myself. That's the first time that's ever happened in the history of the show. Okay. Not bad. That's not bad. Okay. 31 devices. Let's go ahead and prioritize this for 2 hours. Interesting. Okay. Let's try this again. Click and go live again.
Happening now. We want to welcome our viewers from across the United States and around the world. This is the EdTech Situation Room. Good morning, good day, good evening. This is EdTech Situation Room, episode number 227 for August 11th, 2021. My name is Dr. Jason Neiffer, and I am the Assistant Director and Curriculum Director of the Montana Digital Academy, which is Montana State Virtual School located on the beautiful University of Montana campus right here in fabulous Missoula, Montana. And as always, I appreciate the opportunity each week to talk to my co-host. Good evening, Dr. Wesley Fryer. How are you tonight?
I am good and relieved that StreamYard worked. That was the first time we've ever gotten an error. Try again. So, and Peggy George is there. So I'm here in Oklahoma City, where I apologize. I'm sure there's just thousands of people that are just bummed, but I did not publish the show on our website from last week. So we'll get both tonight and last week published, but I am the Technology Integration and Innovation Specialist at the Cassidy School. Although I've got my K-State on tonight, my Academy logo, so we're showing all kinds of colors. We are back at school. I'm teaching 5th and 6th grade media literacy again this year, and a 6th grade advisor, and being an instructional coach. Actually leading a little workshop for all of our middle school and high school faculty tomorrow on our book study, which I am excited about. And kids return on Wednesday, and it's going to be exciting to see what kinds of pivots and changes, because I think we sort of anticipated a whole sort of different set of circumstances through June and July, and now August is here, and there's going to be more pivoting. So sadly, the pandemic is not over, but anyway, it's going to be great to be back. And we were fortunate last year to be able to be in person the whole year. I think there's about 1,000 students over the course and faculty staff over the course of the whole year that got quarantined for some amount of time, and sometimes repeatedly. But anyway, yeah, here we are back to back in the saddle, and excited as always to be here tonight. So what's shaking in Montana? Give us some like Montana gossip before we start into the show.
There's a bear crap in the woods. That's about all I can talk about here. Well, I would say the smoke has been much diminished this week. I know there are still a lot of active wildfires around, but we had some rain over the weekend that I think helped clear some air, literally clear air here, and so it's been much nicer to be outside. In fact, on more of a personal note, I think I mentioned earlier this year that I had a hip replacement in June, and I'm getting back to my lunchtime walking routine and my evening walking routine, and that's just been a real joy and a blessing. As I like to be outside and listen to my podcast and scoot around the University of Montana campus and my neighborhood. So Montana's been pretty grand. And I will say it's still very hot here. I am concerned about the future climate of Montana, in part because, Missoula, I think I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, we had the longest string of 90 degree plus days in the history of taking records in this region. And that will definitely have an impact on Western Montana's lifestyle. Tends to be a little more moderate in temperature than other parts of the state. Our winters aren't as cold and our summers aren't as hot, and that can be a real nice place to be in from a weather standpoint, but we'll just have to see how that plays out in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we I think this is the first year we've never had to water our grass all summer.
Oh, wow.
And it's still green. So like it could be better, but never had a summer that wet. So it's been hot, and we have this thing called Smart Hours with our local electric company, and like I think it's normally 10, 12, 15 cents, something like that, but like yesterday, today, and tomorrow it's like over 40 cents a kilowatt hour, and so they warn you and all this. So anyway, it's a little warm, but hey, I'm not going to complain. It's been a pretty mild summer, and I think we're having a front that's going to come in maybe over the weekend. But hey, we are not going to talk weather as much as I'd love to all show. And we've got Mel out there along with Peggy. So awesome to have folks here in the chat. What are we going to do tonight, Dr. Neiffer?
Well, we have constructed a set of links from kind of national and international technology news headlines, and we'll see if we can kind of shoot them through a little education prism during our discussion tonight to see if we can't provide some insight and commentary on this as it relates to schools and education. And tonight our topics are Google, Microsoft, Apple, which are kind of our weekly topics for us. The tech correction, which is our discussion about kind of the evolving nature of technology and how it might be changing in due part because of the kind of extraordinary impact technology has had on our culture. Some security articles. One I'll add tonight about a little bit of consumer savvy, which is something that I knew about, but it was really well articulated by a New York Times article. Some deep fake and digital ethic articles, a connectivity article, and then we'll end with our traditional geeks of the week. Dr. Fryer, where would you like to start us off tonight?
Well, I'm going to just do a shout out to Mel, who's coming to us from Cali, Colombia. That is super awesome. Wow. So saw that on Twitter. And then Peggy says there's a lot of storms in the Phoenix area. I hope it's cooled off. It was like 109 without heat index or something. Just maybe it was even hotter. Just crazy. So, why don't we start with some Chrome news. So I know you've got a couple. I dropped in a Chrome Unboxed article. Cursive, a handwritten notes app, is a Google Chromebook exclusive competitor to OneNote. Now, I am more interested in this kind of thing than in previous years because I and all of our middle school teachers are the proud users of a brand new Dell. I think it's a 3120 student Chromebook, and it has a pretty decent touchscreen, and the stylus on it, I have played with it and used it, and I'm pretty impressed. In fact, I'm excited that I can still do sketchnoting because I didn't know if I'd be able to do that last year with sixth graders. We had iPads, and anyway, it's exciting. So this is shipping exclusively with an HP Chromebook, and it's a PWA, a progressive web app. But anyway, they can't get the address. You'd think if it's a web address, we could be trying it on whatever device we want. But the article says that it's kind of interesting for Google to launch a standalone app like this, but it's really to leverage the excellent handwriting recognition that Android and Chrome OS already have built into them, and it's not integrated as part of Google Keep. I have tried, various task managers, note apps, and whatever. I really just put notes into my iPhone now, and through iCloud, I have it synced up. So I may play with this a little bit, but is this exciting to you, Dr. Neiffer? And where are you with your note-taking apps these days?
I'm not really a note-taking app guy. In fact, if anything, that's one thing that we'll probably need to pry for my cold, dead technology-less hands. Is I still vastly prefer the physical notebook for note-taking, and I think I've mentioned this a couple of times in the past. In fact, I'm looking for in all mine's in my work.
It's the moleskin.
Yeah, moleskin style. My favorite notebook is actually the field note style notebook, 3x5 by 5 by 5 by 5, and I have a series of beautiful leather covers that I use with it. But my house is littered with notebooks. This is a project notebook I have in a leather cover. This is a composition notebook cover I have, beautiful leather cover I have for this. And I like taking notes. I like doodling in that space. But you mentioned sketchnoting, Wes, and I think that's an extraordinary classroom, both lesson and I think a way that you can teach some technology integration in an otherwise content classroom. And unfortunately, I never really had the opportunity to teach in a one-to-one environment. I was close my last year of teaching because I had a social studies class or two social studies classes assigned to a computer lab, which was pretty cutting edge stuff for 2009 when that happened. So I never had the opportunity in a K-12 environment to teach social studies, but almost certainly if I had one-to-one Chromebooks or one-to-one iPads or one-to-one anything that had a drawing component to it, that this would be of extraordinary interest to me. And I will say, and I'll mention this. Well, actually, I'll wait till the next article to mention this, Jim.
Peggy's saying that she's just wondering what that market might be since OneNote is established, and I'd say since it's native to Google and the Google architecture, everybody who's a Chrome user, like I don't know how many schools are doing Microsoft 365 and Google. We do because we use Minecraft Education. And like our debate team, has to use Microsoft, and we've got, faculty and staff users, a more limited number actually these days that are doing that. Most folks are just in the Google universe. So I think this will be of really high interest to educators and students that are in the Chrome and Google environment. And I've played with OneNote a little bit. I've seen some really impressive uses of OneNote. We toured, actually, it's been a year and a half, I guess. It was February before the pandemic. We sent a team from our middle school to the Dallas and Fort Worth area to 4 different schools to see kind of what they were doing with one-to-one. And the school that we toured that was using the Microsoft Surface, there was a high school math teacher that I saw that just did everything with OneNote. But it was super impressive. And the ways that he could, have a document and, Google Classroom style, be able to have everybody having that, template and seeing their work and it turning in. Anyway, it was pretty advanced. But I don't know what those numbers are, but I'm going to guess that there is a small number of schools out there that are K-12. Their universities are different ballgame, but that do both Microsoft 365 accounts and Google accounts for students. So
I'd make another quick note about OneNote that if you are in Chrome world, the web-based OneNote is just not nearly as functional as the apps, and that's both the Android app, the iOS app, and then also what's available on Microsoft Windows. And I would also say too that I've also seen some incredibly impressive uses of OneNote. I do wonder what the long term of OneNote is, in part because I think that a lot of the things that I think Microsoft was relying on OneNote for is getting integrated into Teams. And that it's always been kind of a problem, I think. And this is true of really all 3 of the major platform folks here, whether you're talking about Chrome OS or Microsoft or Apple. But the bottom line is that OneNote seems to be less the tech du jour than Teams is. And in fact, a lot of the functionality that existed in OneNote that was kind of classroom based seems to be getting sucked into Teams. And so, Teams doesn't have, from what I'm able to tell, and again, I only spend maybe a couple hours a week in Teams as part of some of my outside my day job work, but it seems to be less ink driven than I think OneNote is. And I think that was the power of OneNote, is that this notion of digital inking.
All right. You want to continue on with some Google articles?
Sure. Quick note here. This is Chrome OS 92 stable has arrived. And it's being deployed out. In fact, I received it last week on my Chrome desktop at work. A couple of quick notes here. Google Meet is the article, and this is from About Chromebooks, Kevin Toffel's Chromebook blog. It's now pre-installed Google Meets, and so that's something that if you weren't already seeing a progressive web app or hadn't installed a progressive web app, Meet now appears when you first log into a Chromebook for the first time, which is pretty interesting. There is an emoji keyboard, which is of particular interest to me, especially in light of last week when we talked about how I sometimes create a progressive web app out of an emoji dictionary so that I can use those as part of my day job. And there's also some kind of more subtle things, but the reason why I mention this is because, I've been kind of Mac guy for the last 6-8 months, and I've had an opportunity because my work desktop is a Chrome box to be mostly on Chrome the last week and a half as I have returned to my office at the University of Montana. And I have to say, Chrome continues to be a fast evolving operating system. And as an example of that, one of the things I used to have to do was find a third-party plugin for things like taking and editing screenshots. And as it turns out, the last 2 versions of Chrome, that's now all baked in. And so I don't need a third-party app to do that anymore. So I would once again advocate, that the Chrome operating system can very much be a power user operating system if you need it to be. And then there's another really interesting article from Chrome Unboxed that I think might be of some use to tech directors if you haven't had to go through this yet. But basically, it talks about what happens when the end of life comes to a Chrome device. And Chrome devices now are guaranteed. I think it's 7 years now, maybe it's 8, that new Chrome devices are guaranteed to receive updates. But one thing that's very interesting is that they don't stop working, right? They don't get updates. That can be problematic from a security standpoint, but the bottom line is that the device itself will continue to function. And as an example of that, I own, they're both kind of vintage now, but a 2013 Chromebook Pixel and a 2015 Chromebook Pixel. Those were kind of high-end devices intended to be kind of models for other manufacturers to take on Chrome operating system. Those are not supported anymore. The 2015 model stopped receiving support earlier this year, and they're both still functional. I've repurposed one of them. The 2013, I've installed Cloud Ready 2, which is the Chrome OS-like operating system that you can install, and if you do a little hacking to make it happen. But they still work just fine. Again, there's security risks there, and Chrome is working on a long-term solution that updates the most insecure part of a Chromebook, which is the browser itself. But if you haven't been through that, this Chrome Unboxed article, I think, would be interesting and useful, I think, to someone like a tech director.
It's kind of amazing how quickly Chrome does update. I just did a workshop for all of our middle school faculty with these new Chromebooks, and one faculty member hadn't actually taken it out of the box since it was delivered in May. And the number, I think it was like 86 to 92 or something. And maybe that was when it actually shipped. So I don't know how long when it was actually put in the box. But what I'll note that's a significant thing in terms of teaching and students is now screencasting is built into the Chrome OS. And I don't know, we might still use Screencastify. We're going to play with that and see. Screencastify, allows for unlimited, less than 5-minute screencasts. This would not have a limit as far as I know. So that's significant. And then, allowing, I think, a quick save to Google Drive. So I have not put it through its paces to see if the workflow and everything is as smooth. Screencastify is great. You just click this one button and it automatically makes it, unlisted in Google Drive and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, when this teacher who wasn't seeing the option, it's just when you hold down the quick keys, it's like Alt Control F5, I think. The screenshot region comes up and you just got to toggle between camera for a picture or still image screenshot or video. Restart your Chromebook, boom, she's all set, latest version 92. So your Chromebook should be automatically getting their updates, but you do have to restart them in order to see those updates. So restart every day or every week. I mean, frequently. We just recommend everybody restarts every day. It's fast on a Chromebook. So
yeah, it really is. And that built-in functionality is truly amazing. And I do feel like there is some commitment to that on Google's part. The one thing that's always super interesting to me, and this is also true of updates in Windows and Mac OS as well. But if you are not as tech savvy as, say the host of the show or the typical teacher that's using tech on a daily basis, one thing that is always interesting to me is, if you get used to a set of functions and how things work, I don't always feel like any of these operating systems do a very good job of kind of holding your hand to teach you about those things. Now, Chrome has a new feature where I think it's every other update, they will pop up a box that says what's new with Chrome OS. But if you close that, you miss it, right? and that it looks like a pop-up, right? So I could see maybe doing that out of hand. But yeah, I love this notion that it just happens in the background. It takes no time at all to restart. It's the same amount of restart than if you're just shutting down and turning back on again. It's one of the great elegances of the Chrome operating system.
Absolutely. And this may be a default, but I remember when we first set up Chromebooks in the Google admin console, we would just choose updates and just scatter it basically. So it, sometimes when Microsoft updates would come, I don't know if hopefully this has changed as well, but back in the day, your network could really be hit when people powered on a Monday morning at, 7:45 or 8 o'clock or whatever. And then everybody's pulling down updates and whatnot. So Chrome has some really great, tons of great management features. And one of them is it just says, scatter and randomize this. So everybody stays updated, but it's not like they all hit the network at the same time, to pull down that update. So I updated my M processor Mac, and we have a super fast, gig down at school. And it was like 3 hours or something. I mean, it was multiple gigabytes. So anyway, it's keep your stuff patched and updated. Although I think we had an article which we may or may not have talked about that there were some issues with Chrome on some Chromebooks recently, but I haven't been affected by that. And in general, you just want to keep maintaining your updates. It's important for security.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, where to next, sir?
Let's see. Why don't let's jump down to some deep fakes and digital ethics articles. This is a Huffington Post article from yesterday, from August 10th. And the title is "A Powerful New Deepfake Tool Has Digitally Undressed Thousands of Women." We have talked about deepfake technology multiple times on the show. And, this technology enables folks who have generally it has a lot of data to basically make someone say and do whatever they want. So thinking of like public figures, politicians, people that there's lots and lots of video on, they could make them say whatever they want, and it looks very, very convincing, and the technology allows for that to just trick you basically a lot easier. Now, it still has taken a lot of time as far as video. On the show, I don't know, 5 or 6 months ago, there was one that was a Tom Cruise video, and it took hours and hours for the person to do it. But this one is not video, it's still images. But the horrible thing is you can upload a picture, and this only is working for women. Even if you upload a picture of a man, it's still going to, change them into a nude female. But they're saying it, and this article actually doesn't link to the website to try to amplify that, but revenge porn, and just, the malicious, hacking of people's phones and sharing of, private pictures and things like that. I mean, that's been an issue. But in terms of bad actors and folks with bad intent, seeking to harm people, the host of the site, and I think the registrar, once they were contacted or whatever, ended up shutting it down, and then the site was right back up within a day or two. So another sign of the times of the dark side of the web, and how there are these tremendously powerful and wonderful things that we can do, places we can go, connections we can make. And then there's also, stuff like this. So I think that depending upon the age of your students, media literacy education needs to involve discussion about deep fakes. And I'll just go ahead and mention the second article on it. Kara Swisher has a great podcast, and Peggy George, who's in our chat room, likes to listen to Kara. It's called Sway. She interviewed Ken Burns, the documentary filmmaker, back on August 2nd. And it's a really, really great interview. It's titled, "Is Ken Burns Taking Up Too Much Space?" He doesn't think so. But it is responding to multiple things, including this Anthony Bourdain AI voiceover. So there's a documentary filmmaker who has created a documentary about Bourdain, who is not alive anymore, and took some words that Bourdain had written, but he didn't actually say them. And so the filmmaker used the deepfake technology to actually make video showing Bourdain saying things that he was never recorded as saying. And probably not surprising, Ken Burns says, no, this is not something that I would do. This is not something that's ethical, but really important and not just interesting, but these kinds of things. It's been something we've read about, and we have wondered how is that going to impact us. And with this website that that I mentioned first, that's in the Huffington Post article, I mean, yeah, it's not good. So your thoughts, Dr. Neiffer?
Yeah, I will watch that Anthony Bourdain documentary, in part because I am a huge Anthony Bourdain mega fan. I miss him every day. He's actually impacted a lot of my philosophy about travel and approaching new cultures and new things. And that's actually a whole rabbit hole for me, so I won't jump down that one. But I did hear about that and did watch some clips of the AI generated voice. And having watched, probably hundreds of hours of Anthony Bourdain television, it's pretty close, right? Enough to where I guess maybe it went down the creepy rabbit hole to me, if anything else. But yeah, I mean, it does add a complexity to media literacy that is quite extraordinary, because the seeing and hearing is such a powerful trick on the brain, right? That even if something is fake or otherwise not as it purports to be, that can be an extraordinary way to influence your thoughts and perceptions. And I think that's a real concern. But Wes, I agree with your notion that we have to be at least cognizant of this and helping students understand this as well. A lot of people have debated the ethics of perhaps AI generated images of actors that are no longer with us, and there's enough archival footage to create a pretty accurate piece there. And the ethics of that, is that really acting? If it's for entertainment purposes only, who cares, right? That debate is extraordinary as well, but it certainly makes things a lot more complex when these things work their way into something that's real, news, documentary, that sort of thing.
I remember we watched this movie a few years ago called Ghost in the Shell. I think it's rated R, but it was I really enjoyed it. And the ability to just with special effects, and I'm trying to remember what it's called, but when an actor or actress, and they did this like for Lord of the Rings, like for Gollum, I mean, they had all these different markers and they gathered all of this different data. But once they had captured all of that, then they could basically make Gollum, and I think it's Xerxes, I forget his name, but anyway, the guy who played him. I mean, they could make him say anything and do anything. And so we are entering a world where, even in terms of actors and actresses, like, filmmakers are going to be able to completely create and fabricate real looking people that can do whatever they want. And then, yes, there's this idea that, hey, that's an interesting copyright thing, and who owns the image of an actor, actress, right? If somebody wanted to, and maybe somebody's working on this now, I mean, they could make a film with Marilyn Monroe today, and they could make it with real actors and actresses that are interacting with her, or complete fictitious ones. And if Ken Burns is saying this isn't ethical, I'm not doing it, that's not going to be stopping other people from pushing the boundaries, because this is art as well, but it really is pretty fascinating. And we certainly, I mean, in the political realm, right? I mean, we're not a political show, we're not going to dive deep in the political rabbit holes, but like, there have been some audio recordings in recent elections that, were we further along in the deep fake world, a politician could have said, well, that's just a deep fake, that's not real. And so the again, potential for bad actors, whether they happen to be in your country, they're from other countries who want to probably, subvert and sow discord and chaos in your electoral process. Like, this kind of technology has really significant implications, and we need to do what we can to help be aware of it. And I think also I put the digital ethics headline on this one because when it comes to the uses of technology to coding, we've talked about this on the show before. I really think we need a Hippocratic oath for coders and engineers, right? Doctors take the Hippocratic oath of do no harm, and there's a lot of ways that technology has and can have unintended consequences and harms. And I'll say one more thing. Peggy listened to that Ken Burns interview. He is super upset with Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, and just totally thinks that Facebook has done horrible things, to our country and to the media landscape, and they don't have values. And I actually tweeted at him, not like I was expecting to hear from him, but if anybody out there has heard Ken Burns talk more about Facebook and about Zuckerberg, I'd love to hear more, because that kind of ties to the tech correction, which we'll talk about here in a while. Like, do we need more regulation of tech companies, and what does that need to look like? And can self-regulation bring about the kinds of privacy protections that we need? Anyway, it was a fascinating podcast. There's a whole lot of issues there. And depending, again, on the developmental level, I don't think I'm going to be broaching this with my 5th and 6th graders. I'm not. That first article, we're not talking about that. But teachers need to know about that. And, I have kids last year that were not only on Reddit, because they talked about that, they were on image boards too. And there's a lot of really troublesome and dark and pretty bad stuff that is out there. And so it's one of those things where, as teachers, we need to, and parents, we need to have some awareness of what's out there, and also what kinds of warning signs there are. And, at some point be able to enter into some conversations about that, because if you think about that tool, that's just what a devastating tool to be able to take any digital image from a yearbook or any picture that a person has taken, and again, to not have to have lots of equipment and power and time and hours, but just to be able to upload it, and boom, there it is. So it's that is something I think we're going to probably hear more about in this school year. I'll just predict that.
Absolutely. I think that is 100% true.
All right. Where would you like to go next, sir?
Well, let's do, a lot of these are real rabbit holes that I put in here tonight.
Jump in them. Let's go, baby.
Okay. Let's, the water's warm. Come on in. Let's do some tech correction articles. I think both of you and I, or both of us, threw up an article related to this, but the headline here is that Facebook has shut down political researchers that have been utilizing the API and other hooks into Facebook to analyze Facebook, right? And in particular, there was political ad researchers that were kicked off the platform. And there's a couple interesting things about this. The first one is that Facebook is claiming that it violated their terms of service. And the researchers and also a number of third-party accounts I've seen have suggested that just simply wasn't the case, that they were using publicly available resources and they were careful. And in fact, a lot of ways, most research and most IRBs, if they're located on a university campus, probably wouldn't allow them to violate the terms of service of a platform in order to gather data for the purposes of academic research. But ignoring that for a moment, the other thing that's also true is the Federal Trade Commission commented on this and basically said it was a bad idea, that doing this was troublesome. And
for Facebook to do that,
right? Yeah. That's the article from Mashable on August 8th. And the thing I would note is that the way Mashable is framing this, and I've seen references to this across the news media, is that basically it's a thumb in the nose. That's the phrase, right? A thumb in the nose of regulators. It's basically daring government regulators to step in and regulate them. I guess I just would have to say that it's the headline for me is that it's a terrible idea for Facebook to draw this line, because I mean, that even if they don't like what the research is saying, the fact that they're becoming more of a black box, I think is a terrible idea. And then the other way that another headline puts it, and this is one of the researchers they shut down, spoke to Recode and said, people do not trust that Facebook is a healthy ecosystem. And if you want to, spur more distrust, a good way to do that is to kick out academic researchers that are trying to figure out what impact the platform has broadly on society. So I guess I'd start off with, Wes, any thoughts regarding Facebook taking what I think is a pretty aggressive action?
Yeah, terrible, terrible action. Like you said, it's kind of a dare, throwing down a glove to regulators. The tool which the NYU researchers were utilizing here, well, they were. It's the Facebook advertising library. I think maybe they were having people also capture things and send them in. But this summer, in the Summer Institute in Digital Literacy, I went to a session on propaganda that Renee Hobbs, who's at the University of Rhode Island, did. And we used this Facebook advertising library. It's incredible. It's probably been it's more than 5 years that since I ran my first ads on Facebook, and I only did a couple of those, and I haven't really done any more since then. Haven't been very entrepreneurial for like 6 years. But it's incredible how you can target and the ways in which that tool is built. And when you are creating the ad, even if you don't buy it, it's very eye-opening, or it was. That's 5 or 6 years ago. Similarly, and I think I had to log into Facebook. Some people said they didn't think you had to log in, but like I can say, show me political ads in Montana, between, August and November of 2016. And then I can compare those to the ads that are running in Connecticut or running in Oklahoma. And basically, I think every advertisement that has run on the platform is in this database. So it's an incredible tool. I haven't actually seen that activity I did this summer. It was the first time I had played with that. And I haven't seen, or talked to K-12 teachers using that with students. Again, I think because I'm a middle school media literacy teacher right now, like that's not something I'm going to be doing. But if I was teaching high school, if I'm teaching college, really a powerful tool. So kudos to Facebook for putting it out there. Shame on Facebook for shutting down researchers that were doing some really important research and pointing to things that, Facebook shouldn't have veto power, to silence them. It reminds me of Google, who's fired their own, researchers on AI.
Right.
Allegedly because they were upset at some of the conclusions. I think these had to do with, algorithms being racist and anyway, conclusions that Google didn't like. But it is a pretty big deal, and hopefully we're going to see action. The sad thing is we have such gridlock in the United States that, powerful lobbyists generally get to do what they want. And so I'm not going to be super optimistic that we're going to see, change on this quickly, but at least the FCC came out, and certainly the Biden administration has a much, I think, well, I don't know. This is this area where we have both conservative and liberal voices calling for regulation and, calling for change. It's different kinds of change and for different purposes.
Yes.
But, hopefully we'll see some teeth, to the FCC and FTC and these different federal organizations that are charged with regulating and overseeing things like this. And, Facebook can have some meaningful consequences for it, because I don't know that I've ever heard of a company doing that kind of thing for academic research. And anyway, it is a different world, right? Because they have a tool that the researchers are using. So they have the ability to shut off their accounts. I mean, in a typical research study, that's not the kind of thing that your subject of your research can do. Is just, I don't know, maybe so, but it's there's nuances and relationships and situations here that are certainly unique to studying social media and studying a company like Facebook. So we need more academic research like this, because the transparency that it can afford and the window that it can provide us into stuff that's been happening for years, but it's been in the dark. I think that these researchers are doing really important work, and we need more of it.
Yep, absolutely true. And then one other article that is from The Verge it's interesting because the onus of this was a PR person apparently contacting a spokesperson contacting The Verge and talking about this, but The Verge reported that Facebook is rebuilding its ads to know a lot less about you, and the term the spokesperson talked about was a very meaningful pivot, in part to do with Apple, right? Like Apple essentially shut down a lot of the ability to track in its apps and gave users choice whether they wanted to be tracked in that way. And the vast majority of users have chosen to turn off tracking. I think the number we cited several weeks ago was 95% of Apple iOS and iPad OS users were headed in that direction. I mean, I still Wes talked about it earlier. I've had some experience too. I will say, having advertised on Facebook before, there is something really extraordinary about, and I think the term they use here in the article is micro-targeting. And, part of the power of that is, not necessarily as much. I've never had the opportunity to track someone by a fine or a very specific location, right? Targeting by city or proclaim the home city, yada yada yada. I think is kind of an important piece of that. But I still, the free web is run by advertising, right? That's the bottom line. We don't have a lot of alternatives to that. Short of charging more for these individual services. There are some small scale ways that people try to monetize their web presence that probably aren't scalable to, the entire internet. But if Facebook can do it, more power to them. I just am a little skeptical that they can continue to have the revenues they've had in the past without that micro targeting. And remember, we talked about this article several months back when Apple turned on its ability for you to turn off the various tracking. One of the ways Facebook talked about that was its benefit to small businesses. And I have to say that argument doesn't encourage me to turn tracking back on the app, but I thought it was a pretty good argument, right? Because that's something that a local small business can do, very highly targeted advertising towards likely customers, as opposed to kind of shooting in the dark with more traditional means.
We're having a great little exchange here in the back channel with Chelsea and Peggy. Chelsea notes that sort of a personal tech correction, decreasing the use of Facebook and the scope of it, and just kind of limiting. And I have too. I've definitely. I mean, shaping that feed is really important and taking ownership. Somebody told me just this week how they sat down, I think, with one of their parents, and they just couldn't believe the feed. Like everything was emotional, everything was angry. And like, that's the normal for this person's, I think, mother. So Peggy's really, cut down on her Facebook use as well. And we were talking about, ownership of content, and just like with those researchers having their data, having their stuff cut off, like, oh my gosh, I just, if they cut off your account, you can lose all your stuff. So you can download all of your Facebook data. I put that link in. You can just Google, download Facebook data. I honestly haven't done that. And I've wished, I share, now not just cooking things, but we have a new golden retriever puppy who's very cute, and it's wonderful to share her, and people love seeing the dogs. But I've wished there was a way for me to just cross post that to my own blog where I'd be able to have that and own that. And anyway, I don't think I'm going to have my Facebook account deleted, and I don't think I'm losing that, and I don't think Facebook is closing soon. But Peggy's downloaded her data. It's a good thing probably for us to do. Who knows? Maybe that's something you do like on an annual audit, audit your passwords and make sure you get everything, updated and secure, and download your data. I did that with Twitter recently, and it was a huge amount of data. It was like several gigabytes because I've shared a bunch of pictures and videos and things like that over the years. But yeah, lots of issues there. And we've said this before, we're kind of living in the tech utopia and dystopia at the same time. And maybe there's no better place to see that than Facebook, because it's a wonderful way to stay connected and be able to have transformative, interactions with people and ideas being shared. But, it may be posing an existential threat to our representative democracy and, human rights and other things around the world. We don't know. And I don't know when we're going to know. what has to happen? How bad does it have to be before we make a change? So, all right, let's see. You want to do? Let's see that Verge art. Did you already do that Verge one? The rebuilding its ads.
Yes.
Okay. All right. How about the digital movies? You want to go there?
Sure. Yeah. This is just a quick one that I had known this personally, but this was a well written article by one of my favorite sources for kind of consumer information, the Wirecutter, which is now a New York Times property. But the article goes into some detail about something that's really interesting that you may not know. That if you're buying digital assets, and this can include movies or books or seasons of television shows, so and it doesn't really matter what platform it is, but probably the easiest way to think about this is when you're buying it on the Apple TV platform, right? That you purchase a movie, you don't really own it, right? Like you bought it, but you're actually it's closer in analogy to a rental than it is an ownership, because there are several circumstances in which you can just have your access taken away, not the least of which is the company can go away, right? Less of an issue with something like an Apple or a mainstream platform. But the bottom line is that you don't really own that. And there was an issue several years ago about Amazon Kindle books. Those are digital properties. You don't own those, even though you kind of own them. But updates can be pushed out. The book can be rendered unavailable anymore, and access pulled away. Updates could push out that you don't like, that are make the book for the worse than the better. And the same is true of video. And so just be very cognizant of the fact that you may own a large digital library, but the bottom line is that ownership isn't quite like owning something in the physical realm. I have to mention, that said, like I know a handful of people that refuse to buy anything digitally, and they're still very much purchasing physical media. That is, getting to a point where it's difficult to even pull that off, right? Because if you own a large VHS library, you're literally buying used VHS players to continue to play that media. So at some point that stands to maybe be a losing strategy, but the bottom line is that it's important to understand ownership.
Definitely. Chelsea's pointing out in the chat that what happens to this content when people pass away, when they die.
Yes.
It is super important for us to have our passwords, hopefully to our password managers. Like 1Password does this nice emergency kit, and I was just helping an elderly couple 2 weeks ago kind of get set up there, and my recommendation was put this in your bank fire file or wherever you keep wills and powers of attorney and these kinds of things. These are the keys to the kingdom as you are using a password manager. And the whole idea that not enough people are using a password manager today, but the code on your iPhone lock screen, the code to the Apple ID, like if you don't have that and you can't access, if you can't access that, I mean, you're going to lose that content. And the companies really don't have an incentive to make that different, and there really aren't easy legal ways to be able to get your own offline copy of, let's say, movies that you buy on iTunes, to be able to have them in the same way that you can have a DVD library or a CD collection or something like that of physical assets that are there. So isn't it interesting how our minds get used to like the new ways? Because it wasn't that many years ago that subscribing for music just didn't sound good to me. Like, I like my music that I've ripped, and it's built this library and iTunes Match and all that. And now I'm just like all in with Spotify. It's just awesome. I love it. I discover new music, fairly often as a result of the service. Anyway, so that's changed. But your point is right, Jason. Not everybody's on that bandwagon. It's kind of harder to live in that analog world, but hey, we still have a lot of antiques running around. You can still get an 8-track player, maybe. So there's people that still love vinyl, but it's we do need to be aware, especially with the personal stuff, not like the Hollywood movies, but like your own family movies, your own pictures, having that backed up, having that on a media device like a USB flash drive or maybe a burnable DVD, right? How long are those going to be available? Probably for a while, but anyway, having that stuff so that, posterity will not lose your digital legacy. So
Absolutely. Well, we're approaching the top of the hour here. Let me do a quick Microsoft article that the article itself is not nearly as interesting, I think, as a broader point. But Microsoft and its Edge browser is the same way that there are experiments in Chrome, which is the core. Chromium is the core of the Edge browser. There's experiments also in Edge. They're working on something called Super Duper Secure Mode, which actually takes away a lot of functionality in a browser that is suspect or otherwise maybe not, could introduce security issues into that. And the point I want to make here is not that secure piece, although it is interesting. I'm glad to hear Microsoft's doing that. It's that I think in the end, it's probably great for users that Microsoft has moved towards the Chromium base. And one of the reasons why is because it is, Chrome is different than Edge, right? If you download Chrome, you download Edge, they feel similar because they're built on the same base. But the bottom line is that Chrome is different. It's got a different look to it. It calls things different things. It's a different phenomenon altogether. But I do think having two large sets of users, the Chrome users and the Edge users, that are using a browser, and then these two different companies are building things on top of it, I think that makes the web a better experience for everyone because we're feeding all these changes back into the Chromium base. So I'm interested in this, and I like the Edge browser. I like the old Edge browser, but I never really could find a way to integrate it into my workflow. That's not true of the new Edge browser because it utilizes a lot of the same plugins. You can use all the Chrome plugins on the Edge browser.
Super duper security mode.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to Google that, it can almost be an Onion article, Microsoft bringing in the super duper security. So yeah, I guess they're figuring that that's going to resonate with consumers, and you'll know it's really good. I'm not an Edge user. I remember I tried it, after you had mentioned on the show a while back how much you liked it. I mean, I still have Firefox on my computer, but I'm pretty much all in on the Google ecosystem. Yeah. So it's that again is we're living in the day of surveillance capitalism, and so many of us have drank the Kool-Aid, and there's a lot of benefits to the free things that we do get from Google and from their tools. But I'm glad to see Microsoft pushing that forward, and we all need to be attuned to security and finding ways to make sure that we are engaging in secure practices, both, independently on our own at home and at work. So,
yep, absolutely.
How about an article on connectivity? So, I don't know if I mentioned this on the show. I've shared it on social media. AT&T's pulled fiber down our street, and put it in both sides of the street. And this article says that because of supply chain disruptions, the headline from Ars Technica on August 11th, AT&T delays 500,000 fiber to the home builds due to severe fiber shortage. They were planning to wire 3 million homes this year, and they're going to hit 2.5 million. So I think the fiber's in the ground at our house. So I'm hopeful that in another month or so, I don't know how long it'll take them to light it up, we'll be able to give that a try. We're paying, I think, way too much for Cox, and we haven't had another viable option. AT&T's DSL is available, but it's very slow compared to the cable modem. So glad to see this, but supply chain disruptions are real. Our CFO just talked to us today and just had some different data and graphs. Like if you look at the graph of lumber in the United States and where that price of like 2x4s or whatever, I mean, that's a wild graph, and it's gone down, significantly, but there's a lot of supply chain disruptions, and we're probably going to continue to have them. And so, are you on AT&T fiber, or you guys don't have that?
No, we're on cable internet.
Okay.
And
Do you
yeah,
have
like I said, 400 down, 30 up. So it's pretty good for cable internet.
We'll see. And we're paying for a gig down, but we're only 30 up, and you can't do any more than 30 up. AT&T's fiber here is a symmetric gig.
Wow.
So you can get a gig up and down. And so anyway, not that we're reaching a crisis here and our son's not living with us anymore. And, 30 gigs is actually pretty reasonable. I mean, when we had 5 of us engaging in remote learning, that can be taxing on the internet pipe. But anyway, it's good to see consumer choices, and I'm glad to see AT&T doing that. Let's see. I think I had maybe one more under security. Maybe you want to do that Senate bill, the Ars Technica article from today. Hackers siphon $600 million in digital tokens, crypto network says. Jason, I know that you are a sometimes investor in the cryptocurrency market. So hopefully this isn't hitting too close to home with your, cryptocurrency marketplace of choice. But this was the Poly network, it says, which links some of the world's most widely used digital ledgers. Attackers had exploited a vulnerability in the system and taken thousands of crypto tokens. So I have not dabbled in cryptocurrency. I was listening to Today Explained or some, podcast recently that it was an interview with a professor. Like, the way in which Bitcoin operates and the value that it has, and the faith, because right, that's what money really is we put faith in the US dollar or Bitcoin or whatever. It's just it's extraordinary, and it wouldn't have been something necessarily that economists would have predicted. So, Jason, did your personal crypto investments just get wiped out by this latest hack?
No, it didn't. In part because I'm kind of a chicken, and so I buy mine through Robinhood, which is the investment site. So it's in fact, I probably should know more about where that's at. And to be clear, really Dogecoin is the only thing I have any real investment. I've done very well in Dogecoin. I'm not quitting my day job well on Dogecoin, but who knows what the future holds for the Dogecoin. But cryptocurrency is it lacks adoption in part because there's just all these moving parts that you have to kind of jump into to be able to buy, save, and then use cryptocurrency, and it's the mega wild west out there. So I am encouraged that there's cognizance about this, but it's still, it's in some cases you're safer just putting your money into precious metal and burying it in your backyard. So
it's a wild west. Let's see. You know what? Well, I don't know. I guess the Apple ones we may not have got to. Do you want to do the Apple ones, or you want to do that security article about the Senate bill?
Yeah, let me do the security article. I think let's do the Apple one next week, because I think that's a bit of a rabbit hole, and we're near the top of the hour here. But this is really a follow-up of something we've talked about a half dozen times here on the show. But after a lot of state efforts failed, there is a new Senate bill that takes aim at U.S. app stores, particularly calling out Google and Apple's app stores as being kind of monopolist in nature. And what I would say is that the same thing applies. Well, first of all, a bill means nothing, right? There are literally tens of thousands of bills introduced each year across the United States in various levels of government that will go absolutely nowhere. But that said, that this notion of they want to introduce some what I think some people would call competitive practices into the app store world. I understand why it seems like it's desirable, but I happen to be with Apple on this one. That I think that the single unified app store on the iOS platform, its biggest advantage is security, which is why I called this a security article. But be curious to keep an eye on this. I know that Senator Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota is very interested in this topic, and in fact can actually hold a conversation about it. Not every senator can meaningfully hold a conversation about this. Senator Klobuchar, that's not the case with her. I think she knows a lot about this, but I'll be curious to see where this goes.
Definitely. We're having some discussion in the back channel about just connectivity, and I would just mention Starlink. That is, increasingly viable option for folks in different areas. And I don't think you can necessarily get it everywhere, and I think it's still in beta, but that's Elon Musk's, network. And I think there's some other competitors to Starlink that are working. I mean, I don't know if we're going to be able to see stars before long. We're just going to have so many, satellites. And on that note, the Perseid meteor shower was supposed to start last night. I saw nothing getting up, in the middle of the night with our dog. But anyway, space, internet, connectivity, choices. Yes, we need to have more choices. And whenever there's only one choice in town, usually the price that you pay for it is a little bit more than you might otherwise. So hopefully the infrastructure bill, which I don't think it's passed the House yet, but it passed the Senate, which is kind of a miracle, includes some substantial funding for connectivity. So maybe that will trickle down and affect us in the communities where we live. So, all right, sir, do you want a geek of the weekend?
I do. I just want to share this particular site. I have to say I've been a longtime Audible user. This is not a sponsorship. We are an unsponsored podcast. Contact us for details. But I've been a longtime Audible user. I love it. It's been a really important part of my audiobook diet, and I would never travel long distance in a car without it. But if you don't want to pay the monthly membership fee, or if you find that you don't want to waste an Audible credit if you're an Audible user, there's a really great alternative called Chirp Audiobooks. It's its own app that you download, and they have comparatively much lower rates if you're buying kind of off the shelf for audiobooks in comparison to Audible. One thing I have noticed is it's not always the version that was released widely, so it may not be one of the premier voice actors. I can tell you I love listening to a John Grisham novel when I travel long distance in a car, in part because the 4 or 5 voice actors that do them they're really great performances of that. It's also great car literature to listen to. But I've purchased 5 or 6 books on here now at a deeply discounted rate in comparison to their Audible pricing, and it's been pretty solid. It's a good app, it's a good website, and I would recommend it, especially if you're not buying into Audible books on a regular basis.
I've at times had an Audible subscription. This summer, we wanted to listen to the it's the story about the Indian tribe north of us and the Flower Moon. Anyway, they're just shooting. They've just shot a movie. Killers of the Flower Moon is the name of the book, and Martin Scorsese has just shot a movie with some pretty big headliners. Anyway, I got 2 free books, and anyway, was back into that. But it was that exact kind of thing where it's like I didn't really want to subscribe. I just really wanted that book, and so I'm glad to know about that. I've got 2 fast ones. Derek Mueller is Veritaseum. If you don't follow him, like all of his videos have just millions and millions of views. I watched this one this week. The title is "This is Why We Can't Have Nice Things." Fascinating, and gets to the heart of right to repair, which is something that we talked about either last week or the week before. It starts off with light bulbs and why light bulbs go out. Now with LEDs, they're going to probably last, 15 years or something like that. But it's just a fascinating video, and it touches on technology and back to Apple and this whole idea about batteries and replacement and how, companies want to generate revenue. So they'll sometimes, what's it called? Designed obsolescence or something like that, where they're actually going to make something not work at a certain time so that you're going to be able to, or you're going to want to buy a new one. So it's just really great. I'm probably going to use that video as a media literacy video with my students. Also just talking about marketing and the ways that, cars and fashion and things like that, try to generate the demand. And then the last one I just learned about today, I did a little workshop with our technology manager. It's called Easy Res. And this is a free app on the Apple App Store for Mac computers. And it just allows you to really quickly change the resolution on your primary or secondary or tertiary, however many screens that you have, a little bit faster than opening up the display control panel. So something cool to check out.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, Dr. Fryer, where can we find you on the internet?
You can just go to westfryer.com and click connect, and you'll be able to see all of my various and sundry social media channels. My Twitter, W Fryer, is the main place where I share on a daily basis. How about you, Dr. Neiffer?
I'm best found on Twitter, Tech Savvy Teach, where I share 10, 15 articles a week, and I try to get into civil conversations on Twitter. And now that I mentioned that, next week, I'd love Dr. Fryer to talk to you about that Teachers Pay Teachers article on the error, because I thought that was an interesting study that was released this week.
Awesome. All right.
Oh wait, and I'm the host, so I need to X this out.
That's okay.
This is not just about me and Wes. This is the EdTech Situation Room. We are a once a week podcast on Wednesday nights. We typically broadcast at 8 p.m. Mountain, 9 p.m. Central Time, and sometime in the middle of the night UTC. We do broadcast over YouTube Live and also Facebook Live. You can go to our Twitter handle, EdTechSR, or our Facebook page to find out when we're broadcasting if you want to join us live. We often have a conversation going on in the background with our moderator, Peggy George. But if you don't want to do that, you can most certainly download the podcast. You can do that at our website and wherever finer podcasts are aggregated. But we hope you join us live next time in the EdTech Situation Room. We hope you have a great week. Stay safe, stay savvy, and we hope to see you next time on EdTech SR. Good night.
Thanks, everybody.